Brett Richter here. I'm up at the Canadian Power Toboggan Championships in Beausejour, Manitoba, and have the opportunity to spend some quality time with really an instrumental gentleman in the world of ice oval snowmobile racing. So we're going to spend a few minutes talking with Andy Baker up here, and we're going to dig into his history and learn a lot. And I'm really looking forward to it. So welcome, Andy. Good to talk to you.
It's great to be here, Brett.
First of all, on behalf of the entire snowmobile racing community, I want to thank you for 50 years of service up here in Beausejour. That's absolutely incredible. 50 years of bringing a sport that you obviously have a passion about to the general public, and you simply deserve thanks from many, many people. So thank you.
Well, thank you for thanking me, but when I get those thanks, I always have to pass it on to all the people in the community, because if it wasn't for this community, there wouldn't be this race here. And there's so many people that it takes to put this on that I can't really say that one guy did it, because that's just not how it happens.
I understand that very well, being in the snowmobile race world myself, but it still takes leaders and it takes people with passion to make it happen, and you're one of those, so thank you. Let's dig into that a little bit, okay?
Sure.
Tell me about the name for the event, the Canadian Power Toboggan Championship. It's a unique name, it's a catchy name, but for the casual fan, it's maybe not quite clear. So how'd the name come about? How did it start? And tell me what its reference is.
From 1950s, we had a local farmer that started building Bossack snowmobiles. And he actually at one point was making 50 of them a year. He was one of the first guys to build an actual snowmobile that was a track machine.
Okay.
And it was, for some reason, it got called the Power Toboggan. So that name just kind of stuck, and when we had the races, it was Power Toboggan races. And then they registered the name, the Canadian Power Toboggan Championships. And I know a lot of people don't know what a Power Toboggan is, but
right.
that's why it's kind of but you wouldn't change, the Indianapolis 500 is called the Brickyard. You'd never change that name, it's still the Brickyard.
That's correct.
That's
right.
Just the way it is.
So do you know when the first Canadian Power Toboggan Championship was held and where?
1963, and it was on the river just east of Beausejour. That's where the first one was held. That was the Canadian Power Toboggan Championships. The year before, they actually had a race in the schoolyard, but it didn't have a name. So it was not the Canadian Power Toboggan Championships, it was just a race. So we've actually been racing in Beausejour 1 year longer than we say.
Than you take credit for.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. The CPTC has really been a family event for the Baker family. From what I understand, your father had something to do with it, you've had something to do with it, and your kids also have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that history.
Yes, my dad actually started working at the Polaris factory when it was in Beausejour, and then he started racing. And once he started racing, he became involved with the Canadian Power Toboggan Championships and was the president, I think, in 1970. And I was involved with racing. I got involved with CPTC. My sons were young, they were going to school. I'd pick them up at school and bring them to the track when we'd be working at the track. And then my wife joined because she said, if you can't beat them, join them.
She wanted to spend more time with you.
Probably. And I'll tell you the truth, meeting the people we've met over the years is just an incredible experience. All the friends we've made and the friends that have passed, unfortunately, but it's been just an amazing experience. And my sons will tell you that too.
Sure. Yep.
And another thing, there's lots of families that the father was in, the kids are in, and generational thing, because it's a small community.
Right. Let's delve a little bit into you personally. Tell me about your occupation, your history, your hobbies. You were a racer too for a while, weren't you?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, tell us about that.
That was a lot of fun. My dad worked at the Polaris factory. He started racing, so I got involved, or he got me involved, I guess. And then I was lucky enough to get a sponsor and race motoski for 7 years. I raced motoski and had a great time.
So your dad worked at the Polaris factory and you were racing motoski?
Well, we raced Polaris first, but then I ended up with the motoski. We both did, actually.
Oh.
We raced motoski he raced for 4 or 5 years and then he retired. He was 35 when he started racing.
Wow.
So he was entering the old men's race when he started. They used to have that, actually.
Yep.
So yeah, and then it just, once I quit racing, of course, you can't leave the sport. That's impossible. So I stayed involved with CPTC, and it was a great way to still be involved in the sport you love.
What's your greatest racing memory?
My memory of me racing,
Yep.
or I don't know. There were so many, but one of my favorite memories of Beausejour was Gilles Villeneuve on his twin track.
Okay, but I want to know about Andy. What's Andy's favorite memory? What's your racing memory?
I don't know. I don't really have one real memory. I had the #1 bib for a couple of years in Manitoba.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that was pretty neat to have that, and just to have my sponsor come out and watch me. Somehow, every time he came out, I had a fantastic weekend. He must have thought he had the best racer in the world, eh?
Well, that's.
But it was by fluke that he always showed up when I did good.
One of my favorite questions for racers is there a race you remember most that you didn't win?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why
Tell me
not?
about it.
Minot, North Dakota, Minot, North Dakota. The 440. I entered my 340 in the 440 feature race. It was $1,000 to win first place. That was back in like '78, and I had one more guy to outlap, and I blew a belt.
Oh.
I was taking it easy too. That you should never take it easy. Race sleds don't like being
No.
driven slow.
No.
So I should have kept the bar or the throttle to the bar, and I probably would have made it. But that was a pretty neat memory. It was disappointing, but whatever.
It's interesting how racers tend to remember the race that got away from them a little bit and something they really think they had. So that's always been a fun question that I like to use. You've seen really the best of Beausejour, and you've probably seen the worst of Beausejour when it comes to the racing track and the facilities and some of the things that have happened here. Tell me now about the Villeneuve memory in the twin tracker.
Oh, that was phenomenal. He was the little guy in racing, really. He was racing against all the factories. And he brought that twin tracker and unloaded it. And he was going through what was then corner 3 and 4. It's now 1 and 2. And one hand on the wheel, in the lead, with his twin tracker, waving to the crowd as he's going through the... When does that ever happen?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't.
It was phenomenal. It was just so good to see him, because he came 2 years earlier. He came in an old red school bus with a 2-place trailer behind, or a 4-place trailer with 4 sleds on it, or 3 sleds. Black lab dog, the mechanic, his wife, and 1-year-old jock. They were all in that school bus.
Wow.
And he was on the single trackers then. And he won the Canadian that year too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then Jock, his brother, came back the next year with those single trackers, won the Canadian again. And then Gilles came with the twin tracker the next year and won it.
That's fantastic. Obviously, there's been a little bit of unfortunate history here too. Were you around for any of those events?
I was the president the year that Jerry Bunke was killed.
Is that a tough memory to hang with you?
You know what, it would have been, but the family they handled it so well. It was incredible, like just really incredible. And to see the snowmobile community, get behind them,
Right.
that really made it a lot easier than, if everybody just went their separate ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult sport. I mean, it's high paced. It's right on the edge of dangerous, and people sometimes take that for granted. But it's real people and it's real lives and it's real stuff. So I understand that very well.
And real friends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's very well said. In the bigger picture of things right now in the racing community, as I was driving here for the weekend, the thought crossed my mind that it seems that the ice oval racing is starting to flourish in Canada, yet the States are somehow not quite in the same vein. You look at Beausejour, Eganville's got a resurgence to it. Valcour's always been strong. Now there's the New Brunswick, I think, picked up a race.
Yeah, they had a New Brunswick race, first time in 35 years, I think.
Something like that, right. But we don't seem to be seeing the increase in the crowds and the increase in activity and the increase in venues in the States. Any idea what's driving that?
I'm not sure. I don't know, because racing always was so popular. Any form of racing in the U.S. was so popular. I think the weather really has played a role in it, especially this last year. It's been really hard on the sport, and it just also we're streaming now, which is a great thing. That's, if you want to get the sport out there, that's how you do it.
I agree.
Because you're not going to get everybody to come to your facility. You just can't get enough people in the facility to, make a real dent in. But our sponsors know the audience we get. Like, they've got such a targeted audience. Travel Manitoba, for example. It's a perfect audience for them. And as the bigger our viewership gets, the bigger our sponsorship gets.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I think live streaming too is something that just needs to be embraced and really expanded. And that's going to be what takes, hopefully, this sport into another level of excitement in the coming years along the way. So yeah, real important there. If you could be king for a day, what would you change about the sport right now? Anything.
You know what, that's a tough question.
It is. That's why I asked
I
it.
never thought about it.
Well,
You'd have to think long and hard about it. I'm not sure. You'd have to change a bunch of things, but
well, you're king for a day.
yeah. I'd love to get more money for the racers. I mean, get a major sponsor again. When we had the Skidoo Sports Series, if they could have somehow got the rest of the manufacturers on board, they weren't going to just keep paying money to promote snowmobiling.
Right.
And they were doing it by themselves, and everybody was benefiting from it. Like, everybody's got to get together, and we've got to, if we're going to make the thing work really the way it can work, everybody has to get together, and we need to put a little more money in it for the, to make the racers want to travel the circuit.
Right.
If we're going to go back to a professional circuit.
Right. Yeah, the racers aren't making any money right now for sure.
No, but they need to make a little more than they are now.
Right, they got to cover some costs and stuff to be sure they can keep the excitement in it.
And it needs to be spread back further.
Yeah.
Like, we really try to do that at our race. We pay back the 10th place in the Canadian, and everybody gets some money. We pay show money. You got to make them feel like they're getting something. I think that's important. Right. And they do get, they get a good feeling, and you get a few bucks.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, I think that's real important. If you could take your history and pass it down to your kids in a certain fashion so they could take the CPTC on for the next 30 years, what do you think they need to know that they maybe don't know yet?
Not a lot, I don't think. They've been around it a lot. And you've got a board, so everybody gets a say in what happens at the track. That's the way you need to do things. That way, you're going to do the right thing, because there's more than one person thinking about what's going on, and that's really important.
Yeah, good. You've been just a huge inspiration, I know, to a lot of people. I'm incredibly proud to know you, and just 50 years at this facility and in the sport is a milestone, and that's something that you should be proud of. I know it takes people, I get all that, but you've done great things for the sport, and I just want to thank you for that. Yeah,
you're welcome, but I'll tell you, I'll go to this again. I got a lot out of this. It's not monetary. That's never, nobody in CPTC gets anything monetary, but the wealth of friends is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It just, something I can lay in bed at night and count hundreds of people that I've really become close to, and that was worth every hour, every minute I've spent here.
Awesome. Thank you. I have one final question for you. Reese's Peanut Butter Cup or Snickers?
I don't eat either of them.
Well, if you had to pick one.
I don't know if I've ever had a Snickers, so a peanut butter cup.
Good answer. Thank you. My pleasure.
I hope Snickers isn't mad at me for that.